Dobrý deň, vítajte pri ďalšom vydaní podcastu Otvorene o plyne. Situácia v Hormuzskom prielive, dočasné zastavenie dodávok zemného plynu z Kataru spôsobili na svetovom trhu veľké turbulencie. Ceny sú veľmi volatilné a hrozí riziko ich väčšieho rastu. Rovnako je otázna náhrada druhého najväčšieho svetového producenta LNG Kataru a s ňou aj bezpečnosť a stabilita dodávok zemného plynu celosvetovo. O situácii na Blízkom východe a súvislostiach pre Európu sa budem rozprávať dnes, tak povediac, s insiderom, veľvyslancom Aymanom Kamelom, ktorý niekoľko rokov zastupoval Egypt na Slovensku. Dear Mr. Ambassador, please welcome in podcast Open in Gas. I made currently the short introduction of the topic and you. Of course, we will discuss the situation in Hormuzskej and all implication for the gas trade or gas industry globally, not only Slovakia, but also Europe and the wider Middle East region. So you are a very good person to answer my questions. So I would like to, at the beginning, ask you, if you looked at the period few months ago, maybe did you expect this kind of escalation of the situation in the Middle East?
Well, thank you so much, Richard, for having me today in your very important podcast. And thank you for the introduction in Slovak. I understood a little bit of it with my little Slovak language abilities, but thank you so much for introducing me. And I will try as much as I can to just maybe project a little bit of the ideas and the realities about the situation both in my country and in the Middle East region, following what happened and all the developments that took place since last February. And yes, to answer your question, if you would look at this situation, maybe from the beginning of this current year, you could maybe not as much expect as predict that something is going to happen. Let me remind you that last year in June 2025, there was another confrontation between Israel and United States and Iran, what we used to call the 12 days war. And this also was something serious that happened in the region, and it made the situation quite turbulent and controversial, of course, with the United States and Israel targeting all the infrastructure of Iran, both in the nuclear facilities as well as some of the leading figures both in the government and in the Revolutionary Guard. And so there was some retaliation from Iran at the time by targeting also through ballistic missiles Israel. And when we saw that this ceasefire happened, we expected, and not just us, but also political analysts expected that this will not stop there. Someday, the whole situation will be revived, and there will be another continuation of this, because it was like an unfinished business. And Iran, of course, did not change its position. The satellite allies of Iran in other countries in the region were still there, both in Lebanon, in Syria, to a certain extent, of course, in Iraq, mainly in Gaza. So Iran was present still through other proxies in different countries, and to our understanding and regularly particularly political analysts, look at this situation as an ongoing confrontation that the West or Israel will not stop in trying to dismantle or diminish the threat coming from Iran. So yes, shortly we expected that something will happen. When exactly, nobody knew. So when it just started end of last February, this was maybe the element of surprise, but we knew that something will happen eventually.
What was also maybe an element of surprise was that when we compare these both conflicts, you mentioned the first one in June last year, and now the second one starting at the end of the February. So the main difference is that the current conflict has been enlarged more economically.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the target of Iranian attacks were also other Gulf countries, so to say, allies of United States of America, and also countries which are very important producers of natural gas, of oil, and also some other commodities which are important for chemical industry, for agricultural industry, and so on. So maybe do you expect that the part of the war, or even the place of the war operation, become also Gulf Strait or Hormuz Strait? I mean, all these very important routes for the natural gas and oil, not only for the region but also globally.
Yeah, well, actually, when you mentioned that the Iranian retaliation started targeting other countries in the region, let me tell you that this was the surprise part for us, because we knew that there will be a retaliation, but classic retaliation from Iran was by targeting either Israeli cities with the ballistic missiles or interests of Israel generally, either in Western countries or whatever. This has been the traditional way of the Iranian retaliation to any attacks, either by United States or allies and Israel. But this time it was different, because the reaction from Iran was to start attacking Gulf countries, even countries that were helping in negotiations between Iran and the West in general, like Qatar, like Sultanate of Oman. Let me tell you that there were negotiations already scheduled between Iranian delegation and American delegation in Muscat in Sultanate of Oman, and this did not spare Oman from a missile attack from Iran. So yes, this was the surprise, and even to extend the implication and the impact of these confrontations on the flow of trade and the shutting down of Hormuz Strait. Actually, it's a practical, or in practice, the shutting down, it was not that Iran came and blocked the Hormuz Strait, but most of the vessels and tankers and shipping companies that are transiting in this part of the Gulf were intimidated, and they did not want to take the risk. Of course, the insurance companies increased tremendously their rates, and of course, for safety reasons, nobody wanted to risk transiting or navigating through a very turbulent spot like that. So Hormuz Strait became a choke point. And of course, you mentioned the flow of energy coming from just this part of the world. If we know that only Qatar manages 1/5, 20% of the natural gas exports to the whole world, it makes you really concerned about about the stability and energy security when crisis like this breaks up in a very volatile area like that. So this affected everybody, not just even our region. Of course, my country, Egypt, was damaged, considerably with the whole situation. But not just Egypt, the rest of the countries in the Middle East, Gulf countries that were maybe targeted with as much or as many missiles that were shot to the Israeli cities. So you can imagine that UAE and Kuwait, for instance, were targeted with the same frequency that Israeli cities were targeted, just because of the reach of the missiles, and also that the Iranian administration thought that it can influence the position of United States and the West by doing so. But in the meanwhile, we saw this impact extending also for Europe. Here in Slovakia, for instance, people felt the impact of this crisis, although maybe some people did not know exactly where is the Hormuz Strait or why is it really crucial for the economy. But nevertheless, we saw the hike in fuel prices, in energy cost, in even supply chain, because trade also used to pass with a considerable percentage from this part of the world. So eventually it affected everything, even fertilizers. Agriculture here in Europe depends heavily on fertilizers that are coming from this part of the world. So again, the prices of urea and fertilizers went skyrocketing because no exports are coming out from the Strait of Hormuz. Hence, agriculture cost and prices for commodities that are, basic for any European country became an issue. It's exactly the same thing that happened with Egypt, for instance, when the crisis started. We were hit twice because if not for the proximity and the closeness from the confrontation field, but through the economic impact. So Egypt used to depend on about 20% of its consumption from natural gas from Israeli resources. And immediately when the confrontation started, Israel shut down the pipeline that is transmitting natural gas to Egypt. And
did it mean some shortages for supplies?
Yes.
For the citizens, for the cities?
Definitely. We had to look somewhere.
Industry.
Absolutely. That's true, because we were kind of depending on 800 million square feet from daily basis from Israel. And then when this provision was shut down, Egypt had to look somewhere else because our local production was not sufficient for even our consumption. Because between brackets, I'll just explain to you that electricity in Egypt is generated with natural gas. We depend still on a little more than 80% of our generation of electricity on natural gas sources. So we were really in trouble because we had to find another solution.
Did you find some other suppliers?
We managed to get some other supplies from Qatar through some LNG tankers, and then we had to reduce our consumption by taking some austerity measures locally, like cutting down on usage of electricity. We had to do some electricity shut down after 9 p.m. Businesses were obliged to close down. Like shopping malls, any outings like restaurants, coffee shops, any facilities that are for public usage were not allowed to function after 9 p.m. We also shifted to working from home one day every week, and then we also reduced the usage of public transport and cutting down on fuel. We had to increase also the prices of fuel in Egypt between 14 to 30% when the crisis started. So all these measures, of course, were economic measures that we had to undertake, and it affected the regular day-to-day life. And the second part of this dilemma was to look somewhere else for also the crude oil supplies, because we depended a lot on supplies from Kuwait, for instance, for our oil. And with the Hormuz Strait shut down, we had no access to this fuel anymore, and we had to look somewhere else. So we started discussing with our Libyan neighbors to be able to provide us with some substitute for what we used to have from Gulf countries.
We mentioned currently as an answer on this crisis or situation, diversification of sources. But what about diversification of routes? Because this is also a legitimate question when you have such a volatile place like Hormuz Strait. You have to maybe look for some other opportunities how to get the gas or oil from Kuwait or Qatar to customers in the Middle East and Europe. So do you think that there are some other choices? I mean, maybe some pipelines or some other routes?
Yeah. Well, the key word that you just mentioned, Richard, is diversification. Because let me tell you, this Hormuz crisis served us as an eye-opener. We realized that it's not in your best interest to have your energy in a volatile or a sensitive situation, especially when it's dealing with a place like Hormuz Strait or the geopolitical difficulties in a turbulent region. So diversification was essential, and from every crisis or challenge, there is a chance and an opportunity for a new beginning. And maybe it was a blessing that after all we had to start exploring new sources and new ideas on how to bypass a choke point where if anything like this happens in the future, we could have another alternative, not just for us, but also for the European consumers. So we cannot rely forever on very sensitive resources for energy like that. So from the perspective of energy security, Egypt started discussing and even implementing, not just discussing, we have two visions or two scenarios of how to address this problem. One is for the short term and one is for the long term. So for the short term, they call it like plug and play. This has to be done immediately. We cannot rely on our Israeli neighbors if they will be, putting this option always conditional to the geopolitical situation. So we had to look for another opportunity with natural gas, which was in Cyprus. So we started discussion with Cyprus 7 years ago, and we have very good cooperation, and we find it high time to benefit from this good diplomatic relations and good international cooperation specimen to benefit from this also economically. So we engaged in a cooperation relationship with Cyprus when it comes to using the facilities and state-of-the-art infrastructure of gas liquefaction in Egypt to liquefy the Cyprus gas exports. And currently, from one important field, Kronos in Cyprus, we are doing the liquefaction in two LNG spots in Egypt, in Etku and Damietta. So this is really, a very good usage of what Egypt already possesses, because you can just plug the Cypriot natural gas into the existing network in Egypt, and we can re-export this LNG by tankers to European countries like Italy or Greece. And there is another long-term, but also within this same scenario of the Cypriot natural gas capacities, that last month, April, there was an agreement signed between the Egyptian company EGAS and the Cypriot authorities for a new field called Aphrodite. And we have now the concession of the exclusivity for 15 years for Egypt to buy the total production of this Aphrodite gas field to be liquefied in Egypt. So this is also starting from 2029, while the Kronos field will be by the end of 2026 operational. And even as we speak, there are investments from the European side, from Cyprus, with a little more than $2 billion to start the infrastructure and submerged piping for the natural gas. So it will be operational within the current year, while 2 years after, 2029, the Aphrodite field will be getting into operation. So this is when it's related to our cooperation with Cyprus.
And also, this could be maybe an opportunity for Europe. I mean, when total Qatari share of the supplies to Europe represent like 7% of all needs or all demand of the Europeans, can this position possibly take Egypt with these new projects?
Exactly. This was the vision that the Egyptian government actually was trying to execute, to be considered as the main exit point in Eastern Mediterranean for secured and safe supply of natural gas. To the extent that, let me tell you also, you mentioned Qatar. Qatar Gas is now investing in this connection between Egypt and Cyprus. So the infrastructure needed for the submerged piping between Egypt and Cyprus will be even invested in between Qatar Gas and Chevron with the two governments from Egypt and Cyprus. So this is actually the future, to try to secure for Europe and to make our European friends understand that Egypt will be the future partner when it comes to a choke-free point of export for natural gas. So we are not speaking here about any longer the need for Hormuz Strait or the usage of regular tankers coming from the Gulf area. We are speaking of direct LNG exports that would probably reach 1.7 billion cubic feet for the per year that would be available for European consumption. So when you think of that, it's an alternative that would make Europe more or less concerned about energy security.
My last question is more dedicated to development after the conflict. When we see the future, how do you think this situation or this experience with this conflict can rewrite the map of the energy supplies in the world globally, but also, for instance, to Middle East or to Europe?
Yes, as I told you, there were two parts of this vision. The long-term part is even on the table now, which is to reconfigure the map of energy distribution in the whole world. So now Egypt is discussing with our partners in the Gulf that why not have an alternative route instead of depending on this Hormuz Strait to transport the natural gas from Qatar through Saudi Arabia to directly to Sinai Peninsula and to plug it into the existing infrastructure for natural gas and for liquefaction in Port Said, with the two major facilities of LNG in Egypt. Actually, it's the only country in the Eastern Mediterranean that possesses this facility of liquefaction. So why not use this with an on-land pipeline that can extend from Qatar through Saudi Arabia, Desert Najaf, and directly to Sinai. And we have a very good experience in doing that because there is an ongoing process of bridging between Saudi Arabia and Sharm el-Sheikh in Sinai. And there is also an existing cooperation with electricity. There is a connection of electricity between Saudi Arabia and Egypt through the Red Sea, which will generate more than 3,000 kilowatt per year. So why not use the same route for also natural gas and oil supplies? And also, if I can tell you about the SUMED facility that is in Egypt between Suez Canal and the Mediterranean, Saudi Arabia can benefit from that. So not just for the crude oil, but also for natural gas. And we are in discussion now with our partners in the Gulf that maybe in a near future, this could change totally the way things look and the way Europe gets its energy from the Gulf and the way the Gulf countries are depending on the ways of exporting their energy supplies to European consumers.
Dear Mr. Ambassador, thank you for your thoughts. Thank you for an interview in the podcast openly about gas. Thank you very much once more for your attending.
Richard, it was my pleasure, and I really admire your efforts in promoting and making this awareness campaign for your viewers and the general public to know more about oil and gas. And I myself, I was very interested in following your podcast, and thank you so much once again for having me.
Thank you very much. Ďakujem pekne za pozornosť. Hosťom dnešného vydania podcastu Otvorene o plyne bol veľvyslanec Ayman Kamel, ktorý zastupoval Egypt na Slovensku počas niekoľkých rokov. Zároveň sa chcem poďakovať za pozornosť. Dovidenia, do počutia na budúce.